You are listening to Any Given Sunday, a part of the Dead End Podcast Network. Please subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, and all other podcasting services. Please make sure you check out Dead End Hip Hop, Dead End Sports, Dead End Gaming, Is the Mic Still On, Chris Platt's Strictly Hip Hop and Hoops Talk, and a host of other shows on our podcast network. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. Yo, what up? Welcome to Any Given Sunday for Sunday, May 26, 2019. I am your host, Manny Brown. What's up, everybody? Hopefully you guys are enjoying your Memorial Day weekend. Weather's been a little iffy this weekend for us here in the Northwest. So, it doesn't feel like your normal Memorial Day weekend when we just been out trying to enjoy the weather and do things. It's a little nicer today. So probably get a chance to, hang out, do some things out in the sun, and tomorrow's supposed to be great, of course. So hopefully you guys are enjoying yourselves, barbecuing, eating good food, spending time with good people. My guest this week is a guy that I've had on the show previously under the old show, Dan Labriola. He is the host of the Duke Nation podcast, which is available anywhere where you can find podcasts, SoundCloud, iTunes, everywhere. Great guy. Love having him on. Second time on the show. Dan, welcome back to the show. This is Any Given Sunday. What's up, man?
Manny, how you doing, man? Good. Thanks for having me on, and I appreciate the shout out for all the for the podcast and for the website.
No doubt, man. Definitely a fun time. Last time I had you on, it was over a year ago. I believe it was like last April. It's crazy how time flies, but yeah, last April we talked about a terrible Duke loss to Kansas. So
right, yeah.
Good to have you on the show, man. I really appreciate you having you on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Let's get to it.
How's everything going, man? How's the podcast? Tell everybody how the podcast is going, and how's business?
Yeah, absolutely. So the podcast, it's been on hold for a little bit. Just the regular, everything going on with life. College, work, homework, studying, all that kind of stuff has kind of put a little bit of a damper on things. Just in that case, but summer's right here, right around the corner, and hoping to get some more guests on, hoping to have people on. And one thing that we're going to be doing is looking at each player for the recruiting class that they have coming in. What I like to do is I watch a couple of each player's high school games. There's NFHS. I was just doing this last night. NFHS Network. They have a bunch of their games and take notes on each player, and then try to come up with an article for that, and then discuss it in a little bit more depth on the podcast. So be on the lookout for that. And we're hoping to get as many former Duke players, or maybe even current Duke players on as possible.
Nice. Well, yeah, definitely keep us posted on that, man, because, of course, I'm a fan of the show, and a lot of people that listen to my show are Duke fans as well. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for that, man. It should be fun and exciting. Since we're on the topic of Duke, I guess we could start there and save that a little later. But, obviously, our Blue Devils did not win a national championship this year, unfortunately, losing in the Elite Eight, a tough loss to Michigan State. It kind of break down the season as a whole. Did the season kind of live up to your expectations? Would you call this season a disappointment with all the expectations that, I think everybody had for this team and the recruiting class? And just give me a brief recap of the season in your opinion, and what went wrong, what went right, and did it kind of live up to your expectations?
Sure. Well, coming into the season, I really wasn't. It sounds dumb to say now, but really had no idea what Zion Williamson would be, simply because you watched his high school games, his high school highlights, and the guys he was going up against, it looked like he was posting up 6-foot guys and people, and it was really impressive, obviously, and you can see what kind of an athlete he was, but you weren't sure, or at least I wasn't sure, how it would translate to the college game, simply because you knew that guys were going to be bigger, you knew guys were going to be stronger, and you wondered how will he adjust to that, and it made me look unbelievably stupid to say that, because he just took college basketball by storm. RJ Barrett, I think, kind of when I was watching his games, you knew he was going to be a shooter. You knew he was going to take his shots, and boy did he did. But, and look, I mean, he was still an unbelievable player. He was great. Cam Reddish, of course it was frustrating to watch because you knew the talent he had, and you see all the videos coming out now of, all the stuff that he's doing in his workouts and how great he looks, and you wonder where that was at Duke. And I pulled together, after their Michigan State loss, was kind of looking at the statistics, and he was, I think, the worst high volume 3-point shooter in a single season in Duke history. And you look at the guys who were on that list, and by that I meant I looked up who took 7 or more threes per game, and then looked at their shooting, and then looked at their 3-point percentage. And the guys that are on that list, obviously, JJ Redick, Jeff Capel, John Shire, guys who shot a lot of threes, and the reason they shot a lot of threes is because they made them. And right. Cam obviously, had the reputation of being a 3-point shooter, and that was his game. Those were his shots, and he just didn't knock them down. But to get to your question, I think, the season as a whole was really, it was obviously fun, because anytime you can have Zion Williamson out there and just watching him play day in and day out was absolutely unbelievable, because it was something that he had the ball and you almost knew something good was going to happen. And he would his post moves, everything he did was so smooth and electric at the same time. It was unbelievable. And of course it got frustrating throughout the season, because something I talked about in the beginning of the season, you didn't know where the shooting was going to come from. And I think that really reared its head, and it hurt them. It hurt them because, it's tough when the one guy who can shoot doesn't shoot well. And then I think RJ Barrett actually shot worse from three than not worse than Cam. He shot worse than Zion. Zion, I think, shot around 34 or 33%, which for him wasn't bad, but that was discouraging. And I think, anytime when you're a fan of a team like Duke, it's really tough to say whether or not a season was successful, because you're based on winning championships, getting to Final Fours. And once again, they came one shot, 2 shots away from going back to the Final Four, just as, we talked about last year with Grayson Allen's shot against Kansas, that just couldn't fall. Obviously when your season ends with a loss, as it does more times than not, it sucks. It's tough, but I'm definitely interested in seeing how this team will be this year. And I think they kind of let this one get away by having RJ take the last shots in a good few games. And that's nothing against RJ. He's a tremendous player. He's someone that, if Zion weren't on the team, that's who you'd want having the ball.
Right.
In the last, 2 minutes of the game. I think it's something that they actually didn't do enough, is that when their offense stalled and they needed buckets, they just didn't. The easiest thing would be to just dump it to Zion, and they didn't really do that, which got frustrating. And obviously they didn't do that at the end of the game against Michigan State. And RJ missed a free throw. It happens, but you just kind of have to move on from that and look at this new team and see what they have, what's in store for them.
Yeah, I agree with most of everything that you said. It's crazy because I was, and I know you said you sound bad saying that now, but I think most people were with you, man. I think that, I watched a lot of Zion. Well, I can't say that. I watched a lot of his highlights, and I think I watched one of his high school games that happened to air on ESPN, I think. And watching is a strong, I paid attention to it. I wouldn't say I watched the entire game in its totality,
right.
But
yeah.
But obviously you watch the kid and he's impressive and you see all the highlight dunks and everything, but I was with you. I didn't know how that talent was going to resonate in the college level. Like, I knew he'd be good. I knew he'd be impressive, but I didn't know he would be that good. And I think the thing that would worry me is how all the guys would mesh, especially RJ Barrett, who, I think a lot of people forget now, but RJ was seen as the can't miss uber prospect coming into Duke. He was the 5-star. He was the number 1 recruit in the nation. I think people forget that now because of Zion and everything that Zion became and brought with him. But, RJ was the guy. And, I was worried that, how was RJ going to fit in with Cam Reddish, or how was Zion going to fit in with Cam Reddish and RJ and Trey and the guys that we already had on the team. But I think the thing that was most impressive about Zion is how much he got better as the season went along. Like, it just was scary how he just was so much better than the hype. And then he continued to get better. Like it wasn't like he was better. Like he was already better than as advertised. And then he continually got better. Like he shot the ball better as the season went along. And his passing, that's the thing to me that really kind of impressed me. His defensive instincts, his passing. I mean, he's just a tremendous player. And I'm with you. This season was very fun. I kind of look at this season as kind of a tale of two tapes. Everything that happened before Zion got hurt, and then everything that happened after Zion got hurt. And I really kind of feel that the infamous shoe breaking in the North Carolina game, that kind of derailed us in a lot of ways, because I really thought we were playing our best basketball going into that North Carolina game, and the team was just firing on all cylinders. I believe we had one loss going into that game, and that was the game that Trey Jones got hurt and Zion was in foul trouble. I believe that was that Syracuse game, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But other than that game, we just firing on all cylinders, and then just obviously the North Carolina game happened, and then we lost a bunch of games right after, just trying to adjust without Zion. So and then of course he comes back in the tournament, everything looks good. The only thing I would disagree with you in this sense is that I do think this season was a disappointment, because I think. Obviously we talked about it last year with that class, with Marvin Bagley and Gary Trent and those boys. But I think that when you look at this season and you look at that recruiting class, I mean, this is a once in a lifetime recruiting class. I mean, coaches would sow their right arm to get a recruiting class of this level. And you got to win. And especially in this era where you're not keeping these guys for 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, this is a 1-year deal. I mean, and you have to get it done. And I know it's a lot of pressure, especially in the college game and the tournament, the wild card aspect of the tournament, that, it's hard to just, base your season on just championships. But I think if you're a Duke team that, relies on these big time classes coming in, I think you got to get the job done. And I said the same thing last year, and I think this is a disappointment. And I think this year it's tricky. Do you think that this loss this year was more disappointing than the loss last year? Because it's crazy because, obviously with all the expectations that both teams had, I think this team had even more expectations, obviously. But I still feel like last year's loss was worse, just because of the charge call of everything that went into that game. And I thought that we played a great game. It just lost and got the benefit of a bad whistle. I think this year we just didn't play well in the tournament. I mean, we just didn't play well. Yeah. And honestly, we were lucky to be where we were. So I think that that's what makes last year's loss a little worse for me from an emotional standpoint. What about you? What do you think?
I have to agree, just because, I say that, but then I start thinking about, if that Villanova team that won the national championship last year, they were unreal. I mean, that Michigan team was very good, and it almost didn't even matter, which kind of just, and again, this is just using hindsight, which again is 2020. I do think, though, that if Duke were to advance this year after, if they had beaten Michigan State, I thought that they were going to win it all, because on the other side of the bracket, on the other side of the bracket was UVA, and nothing against UVA at all. They're the national champions, and it sucks living in Virginia currently with seeing all the national championship stuff. But Duke had their number. And Duke just outplayed them the 2 times that they played against each other in the regular season. It was, they just outplayed them. They were so good. And that game at UVA was the best game outside of the first game against Kentucky that this team played together the entire season. Cam Reddish didn't have the most points, but it was the best he played defensively, and he knocked down his open threes. Trey was hitting shots. Everything just was clicking. And that's what kind of makes me think that this one should be more disappointing than the previous year. But my gut still says, watching that ball hang on the rim for Grayson, and then seeing the charge call on, or not, then the block on Wendell, that obviously sucks. I mean, I don't know if it would have led to a national championship that year. I do think it would have this year, but I think I do have to agree, just because, but again, it's actually the same thing that, Coach K called the play for Grayson when, boy, no one could stop Marvin Bagley. And he didn't call play for Bagley. He didn't call play for Zion. Again, you know, for a lot of people, it's a sin to talk against Coach K like this, but it's just, you know, it's spitballing. It's, you know, thinking about what would have happened, which obviously is easy in hindsight, but it's not necessarily talking against Coach K, more just, you know, things that maybe could have been done differently, maybe things that should have been done differently. You know, he's the greatest coach. He's the greatest coach of all time, and obviously I'm someone just, you know, sitting on my couch right now, but it's just little things that you pick up on that, you know, you may have differences in opinion.
No, absolutely. I mean, and look, if you're a Duke fan, I mean, you love Coach K. Nobody here is advocating for Coach K to lose his job or anything crazy like that. Obviously, right? No. But no, of course, we know the greatness of Coach K. But I mean, yeah, it's 2 years in a row, disappointing losses. I'm with you. You did bring up that Villanova team last year. I mean, they were incredible. Clearly the best team. I do feel interested in seeing what could have happened had we matched up against them. I do think it would have been a close game. And not just being biased, but I think we would have matched up a little bit better than, say, a Michigan against that team. But who knows? I mean, obviously this is you know, a moot point at this point. But yeah, it's weird because I talked to a couple buddies of mine that are Duke fans, and I kind of raised the question: what was more disappointing? Because I kind of felt like within the Duke Nation, this loss this year didn't feel as devastating as last year's loss, which is crazy to me. You know, because you would think with Zion and all the hype, it just didn't feel like there was that devastation. Even for me, it just didn't. You know, and I think a lot of that was that I think a lot of people felt like we were on borrowed time. Like we didn't feel like we deserved to be in the Elite Eight. We didn't play well the entire tournament. I mean, even the first game against I forget who it was. It was either North Dakota State or was it South Dakota or North Dakota State? It was North Dakota. I've lost track. One of the Dakota states, right? Even in that game, you know, like the first half, it was just kind of a meh first half. And then, of course, we turned it up in the second half. And then, of course, the infamous UCF game and, you know, where we should have lost. And then, you know, even the Vatech game was not great. So I think that a lot of people kind of felt like, man, this team just really did not play well in the tournament. And that was the surprising thing, especially coming from the ACC tournament, that we just didn't play well at all in the tournament.
Yeah, I think it did also. It also comes back to teams, you know, they had a full season to game plan, or not a full season, but, you know, they have a full season's worth of numbers and statistics and highlights and film to watch. So, I mean, also, you know, UCF, that was probably the worst matchup that Duke had the entire time, because you have a team that is predicated around getting to the basket, and you have 7'6", Taco, behemoth of a human being in Taco Fall, just standing right there. And one thing that, you know, just to, you know, pick at was Taco got a lot of he got away with a lot just because
he did.
Just because, I mean, with his sheer height, I mean, he's not jumping, and he brought his arms down a lot. But look, at the end of the day, Duke was fortunate to win. Aubrey Dawkins was unreal. Wow. Yeah, he opened some eyes. I was like, man, where has this kid been, and why wasn't he at Cameron? He was at Michigan, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out for him there, and transferred to play under his dad. And boy, did on the biggest stage, he balled out. And that's just, I mean, it's the nature of the tournament. And, you know, Duke got a couple fortunate bounces, and then the next game got a fortunate bounce against Virginia Tech. And, then, you know, you miss a free throw, like I said, against Michigan State. And you kind of have to just brush it off and say, you know, it's the nature of the tournament. It sucks for a while. You don't feel good waking up the next day, but, you know, the part that hurts the most is that I don't think I've loved a player like I love Zion, probably since JJ Redick was at Duke. And I mean, I was little when JJ was there, but I don't remember. It's funny because I don't really remember watching him play, because he was there from like think 03 to 06, and I was, oh God, 03, I was like 7, so like 7 to 10 years old around there. I know I'm crazy.
You're making me feel old right now, man. Thank you.
Yeah. And so I don't, oh man, I'm not trying to do that. Just trying to say that I don't remember watching him. I remember how much I loved him, and I still to this day. And is the reason I follow the Sixers this year. But boy, Zion just played hard 100 times out of 100. He put his body on the line. He did everything he could for this team to win. And they came up short. They came up short, and it really sucks to hear. Or it sucks to see. Really.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, and I'm with you on Zion. Just and that's the nature of this one and done aspect of the game now too. Is that it's hard to kind of get attached to players because I mean you're essentially rooting for them for 5 to 6 months essentially, and then they're gone.
Yeah.
So there's not that attachment. I remember, not to show my age a little bit, but I was in high school when JJ was playing for Duke and my favorite player. And then it was just phenomenal watching him play for 4 years, and the excitement, the level of energy that he brought every single night playing. And so, you're right. I hadn't felt that same energy a little bit with the 2015 team because, obviously the national championship and the great caliber of players we had there. But this is the most fun season I've had as a Duke fan, really since that 2010 team. That 2010 team is still one of my favorite teams because of, that wasn't the greatest as far as talent, but I just loved every single player on that team. John Shire, Nolan Smith, Kyle Singler, watching those kids come in as freshmen, develop, and turn into a national champion. It was so this was really one of the most fun seasons I've had as a Duke fan. I'm with you. And then watching Zion play and develop and be everything that he was advertised to be and more, was fun. It was absolutely fun. And I think that's the real disappointment of it is just how much more fun could it have been had they won a national championship, had they finished the job off, but we'll probably never know. So, not probably, we won't know. So, it's definitely disappointing. So let's talk about this incoming recruiting class. Obviously the nature of Duke, one season ends and another season begins, or the transition into the next season begins. Talk about this recruiting class. Obviously it's not as highly touted, I would say, as the classes that they've previously had. I mean, they're still the number 2 recruiting class, I believe. They're still the number 2 recruiting class in the nation. Memphis overtook us here late with that class. Yeah. But, talk about this recruiting class. Obviously the standouts are Vernon Carey Jr. and Matthew Hurt. Talk about those guys. Talk about the other guys that they've signed in this class. I know you've done a lot of work on following those guys. You'll just kind of talk about what you see in those guys and how this class fits with this year's team.
Absolutely. I do have to say, boy, I know that Memphis caught a lot of flack for who they fired, Tubby Smith, or I think, and then they brought in Penny Hardaway, and man, did that pay off for them. Kudos to Penny. Kudos to Memphis. That's absolutely unbelievable. They took one of the guys that I was actually pretty excited about in Boogie Ellis. I don't blame Boogie Ellis at all, simply because Duke recruited really late. They recruited Cassius Stanley, and they were going to play the same position. He saw the writing on the wall that Stanley's a higher rated recruit. He's a better athlete, so he knew he was going to struggle for playing time. And rather than waste his time and even if it were like, Jordan Tucker, where he came for like a semester and then left, he figured, there's no reason to do that. Just reopen my recruitment now. I guess I'll start with Cassius Stanley. He's another one of those combo guards for Duke that struggles shooting. He's an unbelievable athlete. You can look at any of his highlights. You see him between the legs, dunks, all that. Great driver to the basket, but again, it's the same issue that Duke had this year with some of their guards, and that he can't really shoot at a high clip from the 3-point line. His game is predicated more on getting to the basket, finishing around there, because like I said, he's an unbelievable athlete and unbelievable foot speed. It's tremendous. Watching Vernon Carey now, very athletic. It almost sucks that he's coming in after Zion, because they're not similar at all. He's obviously he's a more traditional big, but you watch how athletic he is for a guy that's 6'11", And of course, you're thinking about Zion, and, Zion's once in a lifetime talent, and you're watching Vernon Carey, and the moves that he has are great. He has such quick feet. He stays, if he gets switched onto guards, he can slide his feet well enough to stay with guards. He does take some plays off. You can see that there are questions about his motor. And that's not something you want to hear, but, Duke had, coming in last year, there were questions about Cam Reddish's motor, and there didn't really look like there was a problem there with his motor. He played some unbelievable defense this year. So
right.
You hope that coming into college, things will change there, but.
And that's hard to judge sometimes too, because they're high school kids. They're winning every game by like 45 points. So it's easy to take away. I'm not being okay with it. I'm just saying, No,
and I was actually just about to get to that, because the game like that I'm watching now is, they're up 35-5 or 25-5, whatever it was, and he's not running back, sprinting back on defense, and I don't know whether it was that he got his first break with about 3 minutes left in the first half, and they played 8-minute quarters, so he was on there for 13 straight game minutes, and that takes a toll on anyone.
Right.
Or, but you can see he has the instincts, and you like that. Then they're bringing in Wendell Moore, excuse me. He, again, another guy who can get to the basket. He has the makeup to be a very good defender, which is something that you really look for with this Duke team, because like any team, they're going to be able to score. And because Duke brings in those guys, that they're good scorers, especially Matthew Hurt, who I'll get to in a second. He can shoot the lights out. If these guys can come together and defend, and obviously you have the defensive player of the year in my eyes, and Trey Jones, just right there leading you. It's unbelievable what you can do. And Wendell Moore has all the tools to be an elite defender. Not a great outside jump shooter from what I've seen. You'll see it more when I do those posts and when I do more of my homework on these guys. He can be a mid-range guy, and I think there's definitely value to that, and value to, even if he can just take corner threes, that's something that you want from him, because it's something similar, like we said to Zion, that, if he can hit corner threes and just spread the defense out a little bit more, it opens up the lane. And that's actually something I didn't say about Vernon Carey is I love his shot. And I think the game that I'm watching right now, he's like 2 for 5 maybe, or 3 for 5 from the free throw line. Maybe 3 for 6. I'm not 100% sure, but you look at his form. It's beautiful. It looks so natural. It's smooth, and it's the same thing with his jump shot. It's a very smooth jumper that even it leaves his hands, and you think, all right, this one's going in.
Right.
You don't feel that same way about Stanley or Moore. But again, Moore's a very, very valuable player for this team, and someone that, as I watch Moore, I'll be able to see if he's going to be someone who can create off the dribble. I don't necessarily think that will be him in this sense, because you have guys like Trey Jones and, Cassius Stanley, who will be kicking it out and looking for shooters to kick out, which is where Matthew Hurt comes in. Like I said, dude is a dead red shooter. And it's something that the Duke team from this past season really could have used, is that one guy to come in and, Hurt, I think it's like 6'10", 6'11".
Yeah,
big time. He's very skinny, and it's just, he's a stretch 4, stretch. At times he could be a stretch 5 if he wanted. And he's just, one of those guys who can spot up. He can dribble. He can take you in the post and fade away. He's not someone that I necessarily think you'll feed it to him in the post and say, go to work. Unless he has a mismatch on him, and then he can use his height. Definitely something to watch is to see if he, I'm sure he will gain strength as while he's here in the summer at Duke. And I guess that kind of covers the recruiting class. And then you have the guys coming back. Obviously you have Trey Jones. Of course, it's still an unknown whether or not Javin's going to come back or whether or not Marquise is going to come back. If Marquise doesn't come back, which it's kind of looking that way, it's from just the general things that, rumblings, it's not looking like he necessarily will come back. It leaves Duke kind of thin because, I do think Javin will come back. I don't necessarily, see him as someone who would, spend time in the G League just rather than his senior year. I obviously could be wrong, but
you never know. Yeah, absolutely.
You never know. But for just this case, let's say Javin comes back and Marquise doesn't. It still leaves you kind of small there because you don't even have that Antonio Brankovic to throw in for a couple minutes if you absolutely need.
Right.
You would need Javin to come in and defend the 5, and then there's just still so many question marks coming off the bench. You don't know what are you going to get from Goldwire, who I loved last season. I loved him too. Yeah, him and Trey Jones together, I think it's a terrific lockdown defensive lineup for late in the game. But still leaves you with very little shooting. Alex O'Connell hasn't been able to do anything other than be a spot-up shooter just yet in his Duke career. And a lot of it is because he's not getting playing time because when he's out there defending, he gets beat backdoor a lot and is someone that defenses kind of target. So it'll be interesting to see. And then Jack White, obviously, I call myself the president of the Jack White fan.
Yeah.
It got tough for a while there when he was in that big slump, but he can defend. It's just a matter of whether or not he can actually hit his shots. And if he's hitting his corner threes, which is really all that you need from him, it's a different kind of Duke team. But it will be interesting to see how it all meshes together. I do think this Duke team has the potential to be a very good defensive team. I'm not so sure about offense just yet. We're gonna have to wait and see how the shooting comes about.
That's a great breakdown. Yeah, I've only seen Vernon Carey and Cassius Stanley play. I've been impressed with Vernon Carey for a while. And I was with you, and I love that you said that it's interesting. If Vernon Carey comes in any other year before Zion, I think people would just absolutely love Vernon Carey, and he'd be the hyped recruit. But kind of following Zion, everybody's going to compare him to Zion, and then you're right, they're not the same players at all, obviously.
Yeah.
When I watched Vernon Carey play, and I watched him play one of his high school games, and then I also watched, obviously mixtapes and highlights of him. And it kind of reminds me of a younger, a little bit more athletic DeMarcus Cousins. That's the kind of vibe that I get from him just watching him. He doesn't play with the sheer force and ferocity that DeMarcus Cousins plays with. But, as far as just kind of his game, you can see he's kind of modeled his game a little bit after DeMarcus Cousins. He's big. He's just so massive when you see him out on the court. Yeah, he's just a freaking beast. But I love him. I love the kid. I think he's going to be tremendous. The motor is always a question, but I don't worry too much about it. I think that, obviously Kay and the boys will whip them into shape, and, they're not going to tolerate that at Duke. And plus it's always hard to gauge that in high school. You're playing these all-Saran teams. You're up by 50, so sometimes it's hard to gauge if a guy's playing hard every game or every night. But
that's part of the reason. That's part of the reason why I don't mean to cut you off there, but it's why when I'm looking at these guys, I like to see, I try to watch 3 of their games because, I figure over a 3-game stretch, you're probably going to see what they're like as players, both offensively and defensively, and what their tendencies are. And I started doing this, I think it was last year when I was doing breakdowns before games for the podcast, and I'd watch a couple, I remember watching NC State games, and I watched about 2 or 3 of them, took notes on the players and, what they like to run, stuff like that. And then to watch them play against Duke and they're running the same things, it's kind of, you pick up on the tendency and what certain players can do. And it's the same way with this. So right now I'm through one half of Vernon Carey. So I can't say for sure, is he, this dominant in the post, or is he, is he not a high motor guy? That is obviously, like I said, been the knock on him. But you figure if it continues over a 3-game stretch, 3 separate games, then it's a tendency. Then it's something that you have to look at. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. And that's a good observation and a good plan, obviously, to watch 3 games and to see kind of the patterns and to see what the player is and all that. Yeah, I didn't see Matthew hurt. I did watch Cassius Stanley, and he just jumps off the tape with you with his athleticism and his just ability. The shooting needs a little work. The shooting definitely needs a little work. It's amazing to me how these guys like it's just so athletic, and then the way the game is now, like you almost think that shooting is a must now. Like you have to be able to shoot. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to be Steph Curry, but I mean, you just have to be able to shoot the ball at a consistent level, and that's the kind of disappointing thing about him. But I when I look at his shot, I don't see it broken. So I think he has an opportunity to get better. So, but I'm really impressed with him, and he's got a lot of potential. I didn't see Wendell Moore. I saw highlights of his mixtape, and I saw Matthew Hurt, of course, highlights of him. So I didn't see them play, but I'm excited about the Matthew Hurt kid. Obviously, a pure shooter. Yeah. A guy that I think we haven't had in the last couple of Duke teams, really since God, I'm drawing a blank to his name, but God, he played on that. Luke Kennard. Yes. We haven't had that pure just shooter since Luke Kennard, because Grayson, I wouldn't say Grayson was a pure shooter. He was more of a scorer than a shooter, but
I agree.
But Matthew Hurt coming in is a definite plus, and I love his versatility. You can play him as a stretch 4, you can play him as a stretch 5 in certain instances. He can also kind of probably play the 3 in certain lineups.
Yeah, if you want to go extremely big, yeah.
Right. So I like that. What did you feel about the Trey Jones thing coming back? Because I thought that was big for us. Having Trey Jones come back. That was huge.
Changed everything. It changed absolutely everything, because going without Trey, I don't know what this team would be this season, honestly. Because we know, like, when Duke has teams that struggle, it's because they don't have a true point guard. They don't have someone to handle the ball for them. And boy, to bring back Trey, who led the country, I think he led the country in assist to turnover ratio. If not,
he led the country. Yeah, he led the country.
Led the country in assist to turnover ratio. He's so steady, and he's going to come out this year, and he's not going to be playing with RJ, Cam, and Zion. He's going to be playing with guys who obviously are extremely talented, but I expect him. I really do expect him to score more this year and to get to, he's sneakily quick.
Yeah.
And, the way he can get to the basket, I expect him, obviously he's a true point guard, but to call his own number a little more. And, him coming back just offensively to run the offense, defensively, he's just locked down. He's, you put him on, it's one thing you just don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about who's going to guard the opposing team's best guard, because it's going to be Trey, and that even if whoever it is plays well, it's going to be it's going to be tough for them, because you just know what Trey is. It's really, I think, the most important. You can call it a get if you want, but it's just so important for this team this year. Absolutely huge. And I was so happy when I saw that happen.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I was ecstatic. I wanted him to come back, and I love that he came back, because it was very easy for him to just go. But he came back. He saw that he needed to work. And I think he's a college point guard. I don't know about his prospects in the NBA, but I think he's just a prototypical college point guard. I can see him being a guy that plays 4 years, just phenomenal, gets better every year, a leader. I love that he came back, and I think you noticed it as soon as he came back. Obviously, Matthew Hurt committed, and Cassius Stanley committed. So I think that played a big role in the recruiting as well, is that guys want to play with a guy like Trey Jones as well. So yeah, no, I'm excited for him to come back. What do you think the starting lineup looks like? Before that, sure. You mentioned Javin and Marquise. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Marquise kind of goes. I think he sees the writing on the wall. I don't think he's going to get to start with Vernon being there. So I think Marquise probably feels like, it's time to go. Javin, I'm with you. I want to see him come back. And the thing about Javin is how great defensively he is. He can guard multiple positions, long, athletic, plays hard. I could see him coming back, especially for his senior year. If he comes back, I'm not as worried about the bench as you are, because I think when he comes back, obviously he could be Vernon's backup. He can play the 4 in certain stretches. If you want to play him at the 3, you probably can get away with it for a possession or 2. So he can be a backup there. And then obviously you got Jack White. I think the 3 main stalwarts coming off the bench this year would be Goldwire, Jack White, and Javin if he comes back.
Absolutely.
The X factor for me is Joey Baker, and I haven't heard you mention him and talk about him.
Yeah,
I like Joey Baker. The little bit of stretches, it's hard to kind of gauge him because he didn't play that much. I know they ripped up his red shirt for that Syracuse game, and the kid's got some games. He's shown some flashes. I kind of want him. I kind of want to see him play more. I kind of want him to see, selfishly, kind of take Alex McConnell's place, because Alex just really hasn't just delivered. He hasn't become that player that I thought he would be, being a Duke. And not all his fault, but he just hasn't been able to be consistent. Joey Baker to me is an X factor, because if he can play well and score as well as I think he can score, he's a guy that I think will find himself playing a lot. And who knows, maybe even starting. Who knows? What's your outlook on Joey Baker?
I think I'm glad you brought him up. I know I kind of skipped over him there. I was kind of thinking of the guys that played mostly this season and slipped my mind there. But
that's okay.
At the same time, it's really interesting. And I want to put it out there first. And a lot of people have been saying it, and because a lot of people were upset that, they ripped his red shirt and all that stuff. But he was never going to be a 4-year player for Duke. He's so talented. They never saw him as being a 4-year guy. The reason he came in early was really for this upcoming season. He came in early. They want him to redshirt, get his body ready, so then he'd be even better coming into this season. And look, obviously he's basically still a freshman. Like, I'm honestly thinking about putting him in the freshman focus stuff that I do. And just for a little caveat, because we really haven't seen him play. We don't really, we know a bit about him, but it'll be really interesting. Like, from watching him last year, watching him in high school, he's raw. He's a very raw talent. You can see that, he was someone that, as I was watching, there were the rumors about him redshirting, and I could see it right away. Just because his game didn't look ready. Like, some guys, like, you watch like Vernon Carey play, you watch, Matthew Hurt play, and you're like, all right, yeah, you can see how it's going to translate to college. He was someone that it looked like, he had to work a bit more than other people to get his game right and to work. He's a shooter. He's someone that with confidence, with open shots, he can knock them down. And I think he can be an important piece to this team. I think, though, a lot of what happens with Coach K, as we know, he likes to really just go 8 deep, and occasionally will go 9 or 10 if absolutely necessary, if it's a blowout. It's important for Joey Baker to get playing time this year. Really, is he needs to establish himself early on, or throughout this summer, especially. And in those preseason games, he needs to show, hey, I should be getting playing time. What kind of player he is, I still don't really know. He looked uncomfortable when he had the ball this year, when the limited times that he played. Obviously, I think the first shot he took was an air ball, and that's just it's just a little funny anecdote that you can tell your grandkids about or whatever. But defensively, I think it'll be interesting. I'll have to kind of rewatch maybe the possessions that he was in, and also watch his high school games again, because it's so difficult in such a small sample size to see. But I think he can be someone that can help this Duke team, but I'm not sure how much he'll actually play just yet.
Interesting. Yeah, no, it's a lot of hype around him. He's kind of a mysterious guy, because a lot of people see a lot of potential in him and seen his high school tape, and he came in with some kind of notoriety that I think a lot of people are just what is this guy? Unleash this guy to the world. And the little bit I've seen of him, I've liked and I've been impressed. So yeah, I think it's interesting to see. I think he's a wild card. I think he's an X factor for next year as well. I think if he develops and plays the way that I think a lot of people see him playing as, he can kind of make his mark on this team too. So it's going to be very interesting. I asked you, what do you think the starting lineup looks like?
Right. Well, I think the obvious one is Trey.
Right.
Trey's definitely going to start. He's going to be the starting point guard, and you love that.
Right.
I don't think. Well, I think it actually kind of is now. Like when Boogie Ellis was supposed to be on the team, you weren't sure. Like, hey, Boogie could really shoot. He was someone that I was very excited for because of his ability to shoot, and he'd be able to spread the floor. But with him not there, I do think Cassius Stanley will start at the 2, Wendell Moore at the 3. And then this is where it kind of gets interesting because if Javin comes back, Coach K loves Javin, and for all the reasons that you said before, Javin was unbelievable in the tournament. He played like a completely different person. He was tremendous in the tournament. But I think that Duke's best lineup will come with those 3 guys, and then you have Hurt at the 4 and then Carey at the 5. But I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Javin start at the 4 and then Carey at the 5, and then maybe you have Hurt come off the bench. Maybe you want to have Moore come off the bench. I think it's definitely interesting, and I'm not really sure how they'll go. Personally, I think their best lineup will be with Hurt at the 4 and then Carey at the 5.
Interesting. Yeah, I think Javin does play a big role in that. Seeing him, I wouldn't be surprised if he does come back. Javin's the guy. Just kind of knowing Coach K's tendencies, I wouldn't be surprised if Javin's the guy, just because of everything he brings you. And then when you have a young team, kind of having that veteran out there with Trey, and even with Javin, having that guy out there that's a veteran. That's a senior, that leadership. I think it's important, and I don't think it'll be a long-term thing too. I think you can have Javin maybe start the season, and then as the season goes along, if Hurt continues to play well off the bench, or he develops even more, I think you could switch that lineup easily, and I don't think it causes an issue. Wendell Moore at the 3 is a little bit iffy because of Kent. Again, Joey Baker's the X factor there. If he shows out in the preseason, I can see Joey Baker maybe forcing his way into the starting lineup and pushing Wendell Moore to the bench. So it's very up in the air. I agree with you. I was just kind of throwing that out there because a lot of talk about what the starting lineup would be. I think most people think like you that it'll be Trey, obviously, Cassius Stanley, Wendell Moore, Matthew Hurt, and Vernon, but I think it's still up in the air. I think especially the 3 and the 4 are still definitely up in the air. So it should be interesting. It should be definitely interesting.
Yeah, it's something to look forward to for sure.
Yeah,
see how it all shakes out.
Yeah. No, we'll see. It's a little. I know it's too early to be talking about college basketball. So I know our listeners are going to be like, "What the F?" But no, it's. I just wanted to have you pick your brain about it because it's still kind of fresh in my mind as far as Duke and the loss and the roster going into next year. But before we kind of transition over though. Do you see Cam getting drafted in the first round of the NBA draft? I mean, we're not in the first round, but in the first 5 or 6 picks. He's kind of the one guy that I've seen. He can go as high as 4. He can go as low as maybe 10, 11, 12. Do you kind of see him in that range, or do you see him higher, lower? What do you think?
It's so difficult, and it really gets down to who do you believe the real Cam Reddish is?
Right.
Because at Duke, it's tough to justify, just from a front office perspective, can you justify saying, look, I understand this guy shot, 30% from 3 or whatever it was, and 35, 40% from the field. His numbers aren't great. He had a lot of turnovers, but he's someone that we want to take with the 4th overall pick. That's a difficult sell. But at the same time, you watch him. You watch him in high school. You watch his workouts. He is unbelievable. He is an NBA draft combine darling. Someone that has all the measurables. He can defend. He's 6'8", has a really nice shot. It's really difficult. I don't think he'll go past 8. I think I'd see him anywhere in the 4 to 7 range, just simply because of the talent that he has there, and the fact that a lot of times when you pick in the top 10, you want to, or especially I'd say even the top 7, you want to pick and you're trying to find, you have to nail that pick. You really do, because if you can't hit on a pick 1 through 7, it's going to be a difficult draft. It's going to be a difficult way to develop your team. And, you can miss on, a guy who maybe is a low or has a high floor, but maybe a low ceiling, or you can take the risk and take a guy like Cam, where you don't really know what the floor is because he was pretty off at Duke. But his ceiling is, I don't want to steal MJ's line and say the ceiling's the roof, but, his ceiling is so high. You see the athleticism, and I do think his game is more similar with RJ, with more space and better shooters and the way the defenses play. He'll be a lot better in the NBA, and I think that's the case with both RJ and Cam. And I don't see Cam falling past 7.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. Yeah, I think it's hard to really evaluate Cam Reddish because it's hard. I mean, he played with 2 superstars essentially, and his game. I mean, when you have these super teams, one guy inherently is going to have to adjust his game, and Cam Reddish was the guy. He became more of a spot-up shooter, and I don't think that's his game. Obviously, I think and you got to think about it. All his life, his entire basketball career, he was the guy. He had the ball in his hands.
Oh,
he created shots for himself. I like the kid. I think that was one of the most disappointing aspects of this season was watching Cam Reddish and just like you saw the flashes. It's like, man, I see it. It's there. Like, and then it's like, you couldn't quite get there with him. It's like you saw flashes of it, and it's like, man, if this kid ever puts it together. I remember that what game did he have that was just that phenomenal game? I think it was that. Was it the game like right after Cam got hurt, or not Cam, Zion got hurt, and he just balled out. It was one of those games. It's hard. They all took after a while, but really, really played well, and he showed flashes of it. He's just like, man, this kid, if he could just do this every game, it's amazing. But he'd be a beast. But I agree with you, man. I love Cam Reddish. I love his potential. I agree with you. I don't see him sliding past maybe 8. To me, once you get past the top 3, it's all based on potential. I mean,
absolutely.
And can you really tell me right now that Darius Garland is that much better of a pro prospect than Cam Reddish? I mean, Darius Garland played what, 1 game, 1 or 2 games?
Yeah, he only played a couple games. Yeah,
exactly. Then he got hurt, and I like that kid too. But I mean, you can't really sit here and tell me that you'd make a better bet with Darius Garland than Cam Reddish. I mean, I don't think that's I don't think that's a fair assessment. So a lot of the NBA draft is just projecting and looking at ceiling. And I think you'll find a GM that thinks Cam Reddish it's got a high ceiling and it's going to bet on that. So we'll see. Yeah,
absolutely. The Hawks have been a team that's been rumored to absolutely love him because they love his size and they love his ability to shoot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you could shoot and have that size and that ability to create your own shot, I think, he's got a shot. He's definitely got a shot.
Just think of him, Herter, and Trey.
The Hawks are building something there. They really are building something there. And it's good to see. Let's transition out of college basketball. Let's put the Duke thing to bed. Let's talk about our Mets. This time last week, it seemed to be a dumpster fire around the Mets. They had just gotten swept by the Marlins. Mickey Callaway was hanging on by a thread. And obviously this week, I mean, it's the nature of baseball. I mean, that's why it's a marathon, not a sprint. I mean, 1 week can change everything. They're winning today so far. I won't spoil it, but just talk about the last week of being a Met fan. Let's talk about everything that went through. I mean, it was funny. I posted a meme that one of my friends sent me. It was basically the news wire in MLB at bat, where for 45 minutes you had obviously the Mickey Callaway and Brody Van Wagenen meeting, and then you had Brody Van Wagenen coming out with the injury to Jonas Cespedes. Then it's just like 4 stories in a span of 45 minutes. And I'm like, yep, that encapsulates being a Mets fan. Like that just essentially encapsulates this Mets season, being a Met fan. So talk about this past week, everything that has gone on. I guess we could start with the Mickey Callaway thing. Are you one of the guys that think really Mickey Callaway should be fired? Do you think he should be fired, but it's not all his fault? Do you think you should give him some more time? Where do you stand on the whole Mickey Callaway thing?
Well, I think you summarized the week pretty well, and just that I'll get to your question in a second. It's just that, you think that you can't get much worse than getting swept by the Marlins and, not even being able to get hits. And then when you do get hits, your pitching doesn't go. And then,
right.
You start off a press conference saying that your star player, who was probably going to be out for the year anyway, is definitely out for the year because he fell into a hole in his ranch. And then you get to, by the way, Jed Lowry, we just put him on the 60-day DL because he's still hurt and he got another injury. And then it turns into, oh, by the way, the real reason that we're all here is because Mickey Callaway is actually safe. His job is fine. We gave him a vote of confidence, but a vote of confidence basically just for now by being vague and saying he's our coach, like now and, into the future, or whatever the exact verbiage was.
Right. For the foreseeable future. That was the
foreseeable future. Yeah, exactly. And that's a nice way of saying he's still our manager now. If this slide continues, he won't be the manager much longer. Personally, he makes some really, really difficult decisions. I don't think I've seen a manager like to double switch more than he does.
Oh my God. Yes.
It's crazy. It's really nuts. I personally am a guy that I don't think it's really Mickey's fault. I read a really a good piece in The Athletic from Ken Rosenthal saying that, he's basically fed the lineup. He shows up on the first, he shows up for the day, and on his desk, they're the guys that, the upper management wants to play. And if he wants to keep his job, he's going to play those guys. And which is
absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's just a joke.
Look, I understand looking at the numbers and saying we want this guy to play, but I like Mickey. I do. His bullpen management isn't the best. Even in the National series, just this past week when they swept the 4-game series from the Nationals, in the last game when they kind of needed that game. It's tough to say because they would have won 3 out of 4 either way. He had Gesellman in, and you can kind of just tell Gesellman he just didn't have it, and left him in, gave up the big hit. Luckily, they came back the next, that bottom of the inning, and right. Carlos Gomez hit a huge home run. So it worked out, but obviously that didn't, that part of it didn't work out. Yesterday, I thought he did a tremendous job of managing, because you could see that Gesellman didn't have it late, right? Because they tried to get him to go 2 innings so that then they could go to Diaz in the 9th. And you could see that, it was like, I think it was runner on third, 2 outs. And Gesellman had just gotten like a weak ground out, but you could see that he was hanging his slider. He was hanging his curveball. He didn't really have it. He brought in Diaz, which is a whole nother thing that we can talk about, is how the Mets are going against their word. And it's so difficult to manage that way when you're told one thing, you're told, hey, you got more than 3 outs, and now
I get it.
For more outs. But I thought he made the right call bringing in Diaz. And look, Diaz blew the save. It was his first blown save as a Met, but he made the right call there. And then obviously he pinch hit Nito, and that, he kept him in the game, and that worked out. But I like Mickey. I do think especially last year, he was just given an awful roster, And this year he was given a bit better of a roster, but even then, you look at the lineup that's out there today, and you have Carlos Gomez in left, Adeiny Hechavarria is playing second, Todd Frazier's playing third, You have Juan Lagares playing center, great defensive center fielder, but he still can't hit. You're putting your manager in a tough spot there. I don't think all of it is his fault. I don't think it's ever fully a manager's fault.
Right.
But I said it before that, look, if they fire him, like, I don't think it's going to necessarily change anything, like a lot of things, and the players seem to like him. But at the same time, look, if it happens, it happens. It's something that, it may change the course of the season. It may not. I don't think he's to blame, but if they do it at this point, oh, well, it's what happens.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I disagree with the Diaz move yesterday. I was like, just let Gazelman get out of it. I agree with you. It looked like he didn't have it, but to me, you're going to need Gazelman in the season. If you're going to do anything with this team and this bullpen, you need Gazelman to get through these situations. And I think it was probably better served to keep. Now I know hindsight is 2020. Obviously, if Diaz had gotten the out there, I wouldn't even be thinking this. Clearly, I mean, it's just the nature of sports, right? But second guessing. But I didn't love the move there. I could see I could see your perspective on it. I'm okay with it. But just in general, his bullpen handling, I'm not as high on Mickey as you are. I like him. I think he's a good person. I get an Art Howe vibe from him that I don't think he's just a New York guy. I just think he doesn't. I mean, he's still awkward in his press conferences. Oh, yeah. And I've never bought into, to be a New York manager, you got to be the asshole, the guy that's just going to go out there and spew nonsense and false provide. Like I've never bought that. I think managers are managers and they're good managers because they can actually manage their team well, not how they handle the media. I think it's an aspect of it. It's an underrated aspect of it, but I don't think you need to be that gruff and asshole type to be a great manager in New York. I've never bought that. That being said, he still looks very awkward in his press conferences. Some of the answers, some of the answers that he gives, I'm just like, what? Like, did you watch the game? Like, I think he means well. I just think he's just his personality, and I think it doesn't mesh well here. He's a very quiet guy. He's someone that, if he would speak to the media, but if he didn't have to, I don't necessarily think he would. And not out of like, I'm not going to talk to the media. I think it's more out of, simply just that, he just wants to go out there and manage a baseball game. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, we look at Alex Cora and as an unbelievable manager, and I think rightfully so. I think he's a very good manager.
Right.
But I mean, if let's say in some alternate universe, he decided he wanted to go to the Mets and he's managing the Mets, are we looking at him as being a really good manager? Because, look, a manager can only do so much with the pieces that they're given. And I just don't know if, he was given unbelievable pieces in Boston to work with, but we'll see how it works.
Yeah, no, I get it. I understand. I mean, that's and every sport is like that. I mean, put Bill Belichick, instead of having Tom Brady with Bill Belichick, give Bill Belichick Geno Smith. Is he the same coach? Of course. I mean, obviously it's the same aspect in every sport. You need talent. You need players to play. You need players to perform. I get that. Right. I've always felt that a manager over 162, I think a manager can win you 7 to 10 games. I really do. Yeah. Just on his management, just on his bullpen moves, just on his roster configuration. I think managers are important. I think we live in this era now where I think managers have been devalued. And I do agree over the course of 162, 7 to 10 games isn't much. I get that. I understand that. But I think where you're really seeing managers be overlooked is in the postseason. I think managers are everything in the postseason. And when you have a manager that can't do the job or is ill-fitted to do the job, I think it definitely shows in September and it definitely shows in October. I mean, you need these guys to be able to know what they're doing. I'm with you with Mickey. I don't think he was given a great roster, but I just think it's just something about him. Now, I won't totally bash him because I gave him credit for last year. That team really played well in the second half, and that team could have fell apart. That team could have completely crashed and burned. They could have lost 95 games, and nobody would have batted an eye. But that team hung in there. They fought. They played better as the season went along. Now, granted, it was July through September, and they had probably one of the worst Junes in the history of
Oh man!
I mean, the history of Mets baseball. And that's saying a lot for a franchise that had a 40-120 season.
What was it? 5-25.
Yeah, 5 and it was like 5 and it was like 4-26 or 4. It was just horrible baseball. So I give him credit. I gave him credit for that. I gave him credit. That team didn't give up on him, and that showed me a lot from him. And I came into this year with an open mind on Mickey Callaway that maybe he's gotten better. It's still the bullpen management.
You think maybe he's comfortable? Yeah, no, the bullpen management suspect, absolutely.
Yeah, it's terrible. The way he handles the media, and again, I'm not saying he needs to be, I'm not saying he needs to be Bobby Valentine or anything, but the way he handles the media, it leaves a lot to be desired. It's just some of his moves, the strategies. It's just not all his fault. So who would you place the blame on then? Is it Brody Van Wagenen and some of his moves have not worked out? Who would you place the blame on this season for?
It's beating a dead horse, but when you have owners that refuse to spend money in a big market, this is what happens. If you look, I think in the article, the Ken Rosenthal article, he stated, or it might have been a different article on ESPN, stated that, the Mets payroll is like 155 or 159, something like that. And you're like, oh, that's actually, not bad. But then you account for the fact that Cespedes 100% is not going to play this season. David Wright is 100% not going to play this season because he essentially retired without retiring. And from the insurance policies, they're going to get money back. And if they don't reinvest that money, you're looking at a payroll of like $125 million, which is not going to be competitive unless you have young, really, really young guys that are coming up that, can make that big of a difference. And then you can, like, if you have, let's say, like Francisco Lindor kind of player where, before arbitration, he's making like $1 million. Like, sure, that brings your payroll down a lot, but the fact of the matter is that, yes, they brought in Cano and he's getting paid a lot. Yes, they brought in Wilson Ramos and guys like that and Jed Lowry. But at the end of the day, this is a New York market. The Mets needed a third baseman or shortstop, whatever you wanted to call Manny Machado. They could absolutely have used a left fielder or a right fielder, or if Bryce Harper could play center field, you can bring in Bryce Harper. But the fact of the matter is that they can't. They didn't. And as long as this ownership is in control of the team and really just invest in the day-to-day operations of this team, and they really do, they meddle a lot in the day-to-day operations of this team, it's going to be tough to be successful. Now, look, if they say, you know what, I don't care anymore about saving money, we're going to go out and spend, we're going to get the best players, I'll give them credit because they'll deserve that sort of credit. But if you're letting top free agents go and they're not even being rumored to come.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. That was the issue I had. They're not even getting meetings. Like in the past, they would at least meet with a Vladimir Guerrero. They would at least meet with some of these free agents. And the classic Met thing. Well, we offered him a contract and he didn't accept it. Now there's no word on what contract they offered him or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So it was the perfect spin by the Wilpons to say, oh yeah, we're trying to spend money. See, we made Vladimir a 5-year, $10 million offer. No, he got $150 million by the Angels. Like that wasn't an offer. Like, but but I get it. Like, but no, they're not even getting meetings. They're not even being rumored. No. Like, it's not even you're not even having a dinner with the guy just to see, just to see if you could kind of lowball him. Nothing. That's the upsetting part. Manny Machado, I sat there all winter and I was like, sign Manny Machado. David Wright retired. You have a huge hole at third base. He wants to come to New York. Obviously, he wants to be a Yankee, but he wants to come to New York. I'm like, sell him on New York. Yeah, sell him on the East Coast. Sell him on New York. Sell him on the fact that you come to the Mets. You're the face of the Mets. You're 26 years old. You could be a Met great for 10 years, play third base. You could even play shortstop, maybe move Ahmed Rosario to second or move Ahmed to third or trade Ahmed for another piece. Like that wrote itself. I was never high on Bryce Harper. I think Bryce Harper's overrated. I would have never paid Bryce Harper that money. Okay. So I wanted nothing to do with Bryce Harper. But even Bryce Harper, at least a meeting with the guy.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I hate, first of all, just for an update for everyone listening, it's Sunday afternoon, and the Mets did just take the third game of the series against Detroit. Edwin Diaz struggled a bit, but was able to get through it with a big strikeout there at the end. But look, getting back to the topic, it's a simple fact that look at I hate talking about the Yankees. It's known, everyone knows. I just don't like the Yankees at all. But look, with the Mets, like, you hear a lot about Cespedes. It's the big contract that they gave and whatever, and all that kind of crap and whatever. The Yankees are still paying Jacoby Ellsbury to sit and do nothing.
Yes, he is in Siberia. I have never seen a team that literally has a player of Jacoby Ellsbury's caliber. Now, we can argue whether Jacoby wasn't worth the money. I get it, but he's still a decent player, and they're just basically paying him to not be there.
Yep, and and look, that's what they think, and they know that. Hey, when everyone's healthy, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, and Aaron Hicks and Brett Gardner are all better options than him. And they're not messing around. They're saying, look, I understand we're paying you all this money, but at the same time, just because we're paying you that money, we're not going to play you if you're not performing. And look, the Mets are still throwing Jason Vargas every fifth day, and Todd Frazier is still going out there and playing third base every day, despite an extremely low batting average and despite Vargas not being able to throw more than 5 innings. And that's just a sign of a bad organization versus a good organization.
Absolutely.
Where you have one team that, look, okay, we understand we paid you all this money. We can't really just get rid of you because no one wants you at the contract that we paid you. We're going to keep you, but you're going to sit the bench. Versus, okay, Todd Frazier, you're hitting 200. We're going to play you at third base every day. And Jason Vargas, we understand that you have like a 5 ERA and that you can't go, more than 5 innings, but you're still going out there every fifth day. It would be so easy to cut bait, go and wait until after the draft, sign Dallas Keuchel, sign Craig Kimbrell once the draft picks are no longer attached to them, and then go from there. But it's two different organizations. One run well, one not.
And the issue that you took all the words out of my head. I couldn't have said it any better. Todd Frazier, Jason Vargas. I'm more upset. At least Todd Frazier, like, I can understand it. He has a track record, and plus I think he's a popular guy in the clubhouse. He's one of those guys.
Yeah,
I get that part. Jason Vargas, enough already. Like, enough. Like, how much more do we? The guy's been terrible for a year plus. He's awful. Like, enough already. Yeah. Like, I'd rather see John Neese at this point. Like, bring back Jonathan Neese.
Whoa.
Over Jason Vargas? I swear to you, I'd rather watch Jonathan Neese.
I don't blame you.
I'd rather watch Jonathan Neese. I mean, Jason Vargas is I never loved that signing. Never. I was like, really? Jason Vargas?
Yeah.
Wasn't it? And then for the amount of money that they gave him, I was just like, what? Oh, God, I never loved that signing. Like, so enough already. Like, enough with Like, you can't tell me that you don't have a pitcher in that system that is better than Jason Vargas at this point. Like, you just cannot tell me. Or at least equal to Jason Vargas. At least equal. I'm sure you can find a guy in Syracuse or in Binghamton that can give you a 5 ERA like Jason Vargas, and you're not paying $9 million to.
Yeah, I mean, one of those guys just went onto the injured list, and Matt Harvey.
I mean, Hector Santiago. I mean, I wouldn't even mind if they just cut Vargas and just put Santiago there. You can't tell me he's that much worse. You can't tell me he's worse. And then the Frazier thing. I'm with you, man. I'm. How did you feel about the Cano signing? Because the Cano thing, I think, is part of this. And look, the hustling thing, I've always felt the hustling thing is overrated. People care about hustling. People care about hustling when your team is losing. If the Mets were 30-15 and Cano not hustling, but he was still hitting 300, nobody would care. So I've never bought that. I think it's BS. I think people make it a story when a team's underperforming. Oh, he's not hustling. I've never bought that. That being said, I never liked the Cano signing. I thought it was an overpay. To me, I'm not, because here's the thing. The Mets had all the leverage in that trade because the Mariners were not trading Cano anywhere else. He didn't want to go anywhere else.
No.
Cano told the Mariners, I only want to go to New York or maybe even LA. The Angels weren't taking his contract. The Dodgers weren't even touching him. So that left two teams for you, the Yankees or the Mets. And the Yankees wanted nothing to do with Robinson Cano. So I left the Mets. The Mets had to know they had all the leverage in the negotiations. So I'll take Cano, but you're eating most of the money. Give me Diaz. I'll throw in, we'll trade Bruce. I'll give you a nice prospect, but I'm not giving you Kalanick. And if that's the case, and if the Mariners were so dead set on getting Kalanick, then just make the deal straight up for Edwin Diaz for Kalanick.
I think that's definitely an interesting point, and obviously giving up Kalanick's really difficult because, everything says that he's a really toolsy, great hitter, great, very good outfielder. And look, he's absolutely tearing up where I don't know exactly where he is. I think he may be an A ball. He's tearing it up right now good for him. That's great. I liked the Cano signing. I like the trade for Cano. I hated giving him up. Giving up Dunn, I thought was fine. Giving up everything else they gave up, I thought was fine.
Right.
Kalanick hurt because you knew that, they had just drafted him. And they were extremely, people were high on him. The reason I liked getting Cano was because he didn't look like he had regressed at all. Obviously there was the PED thing, but you looked at his numbers from, previous years. He was still hitting high average. Wasn't playing in a home run hitter's ballpark. Still was hitting home runs, driving in runs. And then last year, when his season stopped because of the PEDs and he came back and still hit like a 300 or whatever it was, that gave me confidence. And obviously, look, he's struggling. He's struggling right now. The injury obviously is not something that you want to see, but boy, he needed some time to clear his head. And I think the same thing was with Jay Reese Familia. He needed time to clear his head. Hopefully this, rejuvenates Robbie and gets him going. Again, I liked it. I didn't like giving up Kalanick, but at the end of the day, if you want to win right now, which is what Brody has said, what the Mets have said, they're in it to win right now, then look, sometimes you have to give up, you have to give to get, and boy did they, because, and look, Kalanick, you think if your window's right now for the next 3 to 4 years, you may not see Kalanick in the majors during that time. And then at that point, he's not really of too much use for you. So I understand the thinking there, but boy, it's tough, especially with Robbie struggling and how he's playing in the minors right now.
Yeah, no, I'm not one of those that likes to hoard prospects. I get it.
Yeah.
Who knows with these guys? For every Kelnick, there's a Alex Exobar that comes up and just does absolutely nothing and is overhyped.
Right.
So I get it. I understand that. I get that. And I'm not just trying to say that because Kalanick, I always mispronounce his name. Kalanick.
I've heard so many different pronunciations.
Right. If he was hitting 210 in A-ball, Montana, or wherever the hell he is, would I be saying the same thing? Probably. But not with as much not with the same vigor. But look, I just didn't like the Cano deal because the point that you brought up is they're trying to win now, so make the Cano deal. But that's what Brody and Jeff said, that they're trying to win now and they got to help them win now. But to me, if you get Cano, why get Cano? You could have just got Machado.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree.
That's my issue. You could have got Machado. All it would have cost you was money. Now I know it's easy to say $300 million is all money, but it's not our money, obviously. But the $300 million, put Machado at shortstop or third. You already had a second baseman in place in McNeil, who is living up or even exceeding expectations at this point.
I love that guy.
I love that guy. He's a great hitter. I just didn't find you didn't need Cano at the position that you got him. And then it's if you're telling me, well, we're trying to win now, then sign Machado. Sign Machado. That's the issue that I have with it. It's like, you can't tell me, well, you're trying to win now. It's like, well, we were not going to try. We don't have the money, or we don't want to spend the money on Machado, but here's Cano. Like, hey, see, we're trying to win. Like, that's why I didn't like that trade. It just bothered me. Now, of course, getting Diaz, getting a closer of that caliber, I get it. And the thing that they always try to spin it is, oh, well, we got Diaz in the deal. Okay, great. But to me, I think you could have just did the deal for Diaz straight up. Now, I know the Mariners probably wouldn't have did that, but who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Just say, hey, you know what? We don't want Cano. We'll give you Kelenic. We'll give you Dunn. We'll even throw in another prospect just to make you happy. Give us Diaz.
Yeah.
I would have been much better with that than throwing in Cano. And if you have to take Cano, then I'm not paying $60 million. I'm not. You're basically giving me Cano as a throw-in.
Yeah, especially
if I'm giving you Kelenic, like, you're giving me Cano as a throw-in. Like, I'm maybe paying Cano $10 million.
Yeah.
Now, I know it's easy for me to say. I'm not in the room. I'm not making those negotiations. But, I mean, look at the leverage. Where were the Mariners going to go? They didn't want Cano. They weren't going to keep him on the roster. So at this point, where were you going? I'm playing hardball with the Mariners. I'm saying, you know what? You have nowhere to go. We're the only team. We're showing interest. So.
Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough to see. It's tough to see. It's obviously hindsight, but boy, it doesn't look great right now, especially with Robbie not performing and the fact that he's hurt.
Yeah, he's hurt, and he's not performing. And again, the hustle thing, I've never made a big deal about it, because again, if he hits 320 and they're 30-15, the hustle thing is I've always hated that. So I guess projecting this out a little bit, obviously the Mets just won 2 out of 3 against the Tigers. They had a great homestand. They went 6-1 in the homestand. That's great. Yeah. They've kind of at least gotten themselves to sea level or to water. They haven't gone above water yet, but they got to water. Nope. Now they go out to LA to play the Dodgers. Who knows? What's your outlook on this team? If everybody is healthy, if everybody is right, do you think this team is at the very least a wild card contender? Because that's the other disappointing thing about this division, about this team, is that the division is not that great. I don't believe in the Phillies. Like, I know the Phillies are playing well right now, but I don't think the Phillies are unbeatable. And the Braves, not at all. I don't think the Braves are this behemoth either. So I think the Mets are there. This division is there for the taking. The Nationals look like they're going to have a year where they're just not going to fire. And the Marlins are god awful. We know that. So the division's there. And that's the frustrating part. The division is right there. It's wide open. If everybody's healthy, what is this team in your eyes?
I think they're a team that with a not great NL East is a team that can really fight to be that, to win the NL East. But I do think that at the same time, if that isn't the case, they should be a team that can fight for a playoff spot either way with a wild card. I mean, you look at this team, and Brody said a lot about getting rid of the ifs. So as much as I love hearing that, we can play the if game right now just for this, to say, all right, Conforto's back. And I'm not counting Cespedes because that's just... Yeah,
Cespedes is done. Just don't count Cespedes. I never counted him this year,
McNeil back. And then, who else? Nimmo comes back. And say what you want about Nimmo and how much he's been struggling this year. I think there's still more upside to him playing center field because with the potential to get offense from him than to get offense from Juan Lagares. Then you could take them out in a double switch and have Lagares play center field if you have the lead late in the game. JD Davis, I love JD Davis.
I love that kid. That was a steal.
That dude can play. That dude can hit. He's not a good fielder. He's been fine in the outfield. Obviously, we don't know what Jed Lowry is yet, but if you look at that lineup with Jed Lowry in there, I mean, geez, you have McNeil leading off, and McNeil is just he's my favorite player on this team, other than DeGrom, and I think he might be my favorite just in general because he doesn't really strike out. He puts the ball in play. It's just fun to watch. He does little things. He can play. He actually plays a good left field and plays a good second base. It's really
he's a good. It's interesting because that was the knock on him too, is that they didn't know if his glove would match his bat. And he's actually played a lot better than expected. Yeah, so I agree with you. I love JD Davis. I think he should be at least the third baseman over Frazier right now.
Oh, I agree there. But let's say, you know, you have McNeil, you have Pete Alonso, who he's been struggling a bit over the last month or so, but it's been still hitting bombs. And you know that he's someone who can, you know, get you big hits and get you home runs. You have Robbie Cano, you have Michael Conforto, you have Wilson Ramos, you have Jed Lowry. I mean, you have Brandon Nimmo, Ahmed Rosario, pitcher spot. You look at that team and you're like, these guys can hit. And then you look at the rotation, and if they're on, I understand saying if a lot, but boy, you throw DeGrom there, you throw Wheeler, who despite getting 3 runs today actually looked very good. And then you have, Noah needs to figure himself out, needs to get that slider working again, because I was seeing something how a person on Twitter was saying that it doesn't look like he has the good grip on his slider, and it's costing him. And it's very well possible, because I mean, he hasn't really struggled in his career other than this. Then you have Steven Matz, who you're still not sure what he can be, but he's good. He is good. And then obviously you have Vargas, but boy, you look at that team and you're like, this team can play.
Yes,
They have guys who not only, like last year was just a bunch of guys who could hit for power but couldn't hit. This year you have guys who can hit. You have guys who can hit for power. You have guys who can do both. And you just look at this team and you're like, they can be good. And obviously this is an important stretch coming up right now. They took care of business. Now look, obviously getting swept by the Marlins is terrible, and it easily could be 9-1 in their last 10.
Yeah.
If they had taken care of business there. But look, right when their season was on the brink, it was on the brink of, you know, just falling off, losing, 5 in a row, including the last 2 to the Nats.
Yeah.
They've run out and they've won 6 of the last 7. But now you're going to the West Coast and you're playing the Dodgers, you're playing Arizona. And then you have a break, and then you're playing San Francisco, who's not great, but, you know, with still the West Coast swing. I think a lot will be said about this season over the next week's worth of games against the Dodgers and Arizona.
Yeah, this is the stretch.
If the Mets want to prove that they hit their blip, but they stayed around, and they hit the blip but didn't hit the blip like they did last year, where just the wheels fell off and everything just stopped working. This is the trip. And look, the Dodgers are the best team in the National League, arguably one of the best teams in baseball. But you have to find a way. You have to find a way to win, and you have to try to get over that hump, get over 500. They're back to 500 now. You have to try to get over that hump, and you have to keep the good times going right now.
No, I agree with you. This is the stretch of the season. This is their season right now. They took care of business, and I agree with you. I think it was very impressive. They were able to right the ship, because thank God to the Nationals bullpen. I mean, God, Lee.
Oh, jeez.
Like that. But hey, you can only play the people that are in front of you, right? And they took care of
absolutely
what they had to do. And
absolutely,
no one's gonna ever take that away from them. They did what they had to do. Now find the consistency. Now find the way to do it consistently. You know, go out to LA and you can take 2. I mean, LA, the Dodgers are not unbeatable. You can take 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers. And Arizona, you know, I know that Arizona's, you know, Lovello is just a hell of a manager. That's an example.
He really is.
That guy's got Arizona playing well, and that team is just look at the talent on that team. It's not great, but you know, Arizona's not unbeatable. You can beat Arizona. And then we talk about the Giants. I mean, so this is manageable for you if you can just stay consistent, get guys back, keep playing. I will say this: we've done a lot of Met bashing, but I like the fact that, of course, right? But I love the fact that they've got some depth this year for the first time in a long time. I mean, look at the guys that they have now. Adeiny Echeverria, you know, he's a major league player. He's a guy that can actually be a major league player. You know, they're not running out there the Mike Baxters of the world. They're not out running guys that, you know, AAA guys out there. I mean, they're running quality major league level guys. I mean, Adeiny Echeverria, Carlos Gomez, these are guys that can keep you afloat until your big guys come back. And then even when your big guys come back, these are guys that are valuable bench pieces. Like I'd still want to keep Carlos Gomez around. I'd still want to keep Adeiny Echeverria around. You know, I know they DFA'd Davis, but even Davis is a contributor. We'll see what they get out of Matt Kemp. Matt Kemp is a guy. I like that Matt Kemp move. I still think he's a guy that can help you. I think he's a guy that gives you a pop, and he can play the outfield. And I love the fact that they're going out and getting these made, because I think that was one of the knocks I had on Alderson all those years, is that the bench just was really lacking. Outside of 2015 when he got Uribe and he got Kelly Johnson, it just didn't have major league caliber guys on the bench, and that hurt him.
No, absolutely. And at the same time, I love the Matt Kemp signing. I agree, because look, that's a no risk with the potential for a high reward.
Absolutely.
He can't play the outfield anymore, really. But if you're facing, let's say your offense is struggling a bit, you need someone to hit. The dude can go out there and hit. Like I think I had a friend who sent me his last couple games, or his last maybe week's worth of games with Cincinnati before they released him. He was hitting like a 270. It's not like he can't hit. It's simply that, look.
He's probably a DH at this point in his career, so he probably should have ended up in an American League team. But, hey, he could still – I mean, you could still trot him out there. I mean, you're trotting Todd Frazier out there, for God's sakes. I mean, you could still trot out Matt Kemp and still get something out of him. So, I agree with you. I love that signing.
Yeah, and look, it's actually going to be interesting now, because my initial thought before today was, all right, Cano's going to come back at some point. You hope that Lowry's going to come back. But let's say Cano comes back. Who's the roster casualty? I mean, today they made a tough move, and they had to get rid of Rajai Davis. They're hoping that he clears waivers and he'll go to AAA. But, and that was to get Conforto back. Now, if Cano comes back, are you really going to send Dom Smith back down again? Because I don't think you can.
You can't. No,
I mean, he went, I think, 2 for 3 with a walk today, and he's a great bat off the bench, and he's someone that, look, if Pete struggles and then you want to start splitting time, you can do that because Dom's playing very well.
And you know what I love about, not to cut you off for a second, but you know what I love about Dom Smith? You know what I love about Dom Smith? That kid's been browbeaten and beaten down for 2 years, and that kid got himself in shape. He didn't sulk. He didn't cry. He didn't bitch. He didn't moan. He said, you know what? I'm going to go out. I've never seen a kid. I mean, people forget this kid was a highly touted prospect. I mean, he was
the number one prospect in baseball for a while.
He wasn't a guy that, he wasn't a can't miss guy per se, but he was a guy that a lot of people had high hopes for. The weight was always an issue. It looks like he's got himself in great shape. He looks he looks completely different. He looks totally different than he
does.
And he's a guy that I respect that. That kid got browbeaten. He got destroyed. He got drugged to more than any other prospect I had ever seen with the Mets. Yeah. I mean, and he, you know what? He didn't cry. He didn't sulk, like I said, and he got himself in shape, and he's made himself into a major league player. I respect that, because he could have easily folded. He could have been another Lastings Millage or anybody, and countless other Met prospects that just go by the wayside. He didn't. He made himself into a big player, and I like this kid. I want to see him on this roster. I think he's earned it.
Yeah, absolutely, and you admire that. You absolutely do. And you look and who are they going to dump though? Like Hechavarria has
Hechavarria's playing well. Yeah. He's playing well.
They have a difficult decision to make, and look, these are the difficult decisions that, as a team, obviously it sucks to make because it's really difficult. And but look, it's a good problem to have. It really is. I wish they'd get more pitching depth. I wish they get more starting pitching depth, especially when they let Gio Gonzalez go, because they wouldn't guarantee him a spot in the rotation over Vargas. That you don't like. That I don't like. And then they wound up spending $2 million to call up Hector Santiago.
Exactly.
Which is exactly what they cost. Exactly what it cost to get Gio. But I mean, we'll see. Yeah,
no, we'll definitely see. Let's talk, almost wrapping up here, but let's talk about Pete Alonso real quick. I mean, has he exceeded your expectations?
Of course.
I love the kid. I love the kid at AAA. I thought he had potential. I'm always a skeptic with these prospects. Like, I always expect the worst until they overperform, because I've just been burned so many times. Like, I thought, this guy was going to be great, and he didn't live up to it. I thought this guy was going to be great, and he didn't live up to it. So I kind of take a wait and see approach with prospects. Like, I expect the worst and hope for the best. And so I expected the worst for Pete Alonso. I expected him to be in Syracuse by now, and he's exceeded everything that, and this kid's a leader. He just has a presence about him. I know he's struggling right now, but I think this is a good thing. I think it's a good thing that he's struggling right now. I think he gets to, humble himself a little bit, figure some things out, and then he'll be back. I have no confidence that this kid's going to be back. So talk to me about Pete Alonso. Has he exceeded your expectations in any way?
I mean, I think absolutely, because like you said, when someone does something in the minors, it's great, but then there's always that, well, can you do it in the majors? And he came out guns blazing. He was unbelievable. And look, he's struggling now, but he's still getting his timely hits. He's getting his big hits.
And he's still a presence in the lineup. Yeah.
Absolutely. Someone that you have to worry about. And look, slumps happen. I think he's gonna get out of it. A slump just happened with Wilson Ramos. He was slumping for a while, and then he just came out of it now, and obviously it looks terrific. I think today was actually a very good day to give him off.
Yeah.
To have Dom start, I think that was actually a pretty good call, especially with them now going to the West Coast, because they're going to need him for that series coming up, and they face Kershaw tomorrow in the first game of the series. So you want that right-handed bat in the lineup. But just in general, I've been so impressed. I've been really impressed with him at first base. Defensively, that was the knock on him. It may not be fluid, but boy, we've come a long way from watching James Loney not stretch at all at first base to now Pete Alonso doing full splits at first base. He does all the little things. He works so hard. And then he says everything right after the games, and he gets so excited and he's so happy, gets the crowd fired up. How can you not love him?
He looks like a star, though. He has that star quality about it. It's just that it factor. Yeah. That thing that you just can't put a measure on, but he just has it. I think he has it. Yeah. I think Conforto has it too. I love the way it's sad because Conforto was actually playing well when he ran into Cano or whatever. But I love Conforto, and that's the other thing about this team too. They have young players. They have a young nucleus here. I mean, you got Alonso, you got Conforto, you got McNeil, you got Rosario. I know Rosario's kind of been up and down defense, but Rosario I still have hope for Rosario, and even Dom Smith. I throw Dom Smith in there. Like, you have a young core on this team. JD Davis is only 25 years old. Like, they really have a young core here, like a good, solid young core that they can build around. And I'm throwing JD Davis in there because I like the kid. I think he's got potential. So not all is wrong with the Mets. And I think that's the frustration. I think that's why there's been a lot of frustration with the fan base, because I think the Mets fan sees that there's talent with this team. There's potential with this team. And I think we need to get some things sorted out. I'm with you. It's interesting to see when everybody comes back, who's the casualty. Like when Cano comes back, who's the casualty? I think Dom has to stay. I'd even be willing to sacrifice one of the bullpen pitchers. I agree. Dom has to stay. That's over now. Like, he has to stay here now. That's going to be interesting. Last thing before I let you go, man. The pitching. I think that's probably been the most disappointing aspect of this season so far, is how up and down the pitching has been. I think you expected a little regression from Jake. I mean, I think even the biggest Jake DeGrom fan had to expect that he wasn't going to do what he did last year. I mean, that was one of the great pitching seasons of all time. I don't think anybody expected this. Talk about Jake and talk about Noah, because I think Zach is Zach. And Matt's are Matt's. I think they're in a different category themselves. But talk about Noah Syndergaard and Jacob deGrom first. Like, I don't think anybody expected those guys to kind of just be up and down. They're just up and down. I mean, you see Noah, you have a great game. They have a so-so game. They have a bad game. They have a great. It's just been up and down with those two guys.
Yeah, Jake, I just don't worry about him, because obviously he comes out the first two games of the season, you're like, oh boy, like he looks even better than he did last season. Then naturally he regresses a bit, has some really uncharacteristic and some bad starts, and he's really trying to find his he's trying to find his location, get his location on his fastball. There's something about him that you look at and you just don't worry. You're like, do you know what? Like, if he says I was bad, I'm going to figure it out. You're like, all right, he was bad. He's going to figure it out. And then he just goes out and does it. Noah, I'm just I'm a bit concerned, because I mean, I've never seen guys look so comfortable in the batter's box against a 100-mile-an-hour fastball coming at them with good movement, and they're staying in there, and they're they're hitting it, and his slider hasn't looked good. He's getting beaten, and I think there needs to be the adjustment, and the big adjustment, like I said, I think is finding that slider. He's got to find that slider that has that sharp, almost cutter-like movement, and needs to go from there. It's tough, but if they can turn it around, and I know that's a big if, especially because you don't know. You of course no one really knows. But you look at that top three of the rotation, and you look at Matt as Matt would technically be the number 4 starter because Wheeler's just been very good. Or recent, like the last couple starts, he's been good. He had struggled previously, and I mean for a while today it wasn't looking good until he settled down and didn't let up any more runs. And I just as a quick aside, I'm very happy that he was able to get a win. When, look, he gave up 3 runs. Is that great? No. He went 7 1/3.
Hey, it's a quality start, yeah.
7 1/3, 3 runs. Your team should be able to score you at least 3 runs to get you a no decision, and they should be able to get you 4 runs to get you a win.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to face elite starters, and it's just not going to happen. Luckily today, they were able to make it work. But then you look at Matz. You have Matz as your number 4 starter, and that's an above-average number 4 starter. And then obviously you have Vargas, who's a below-average 5th starter. And you can see how this team can be in every game. And really, 4 out of the 5 days, they have a pretty damn good shot at winning each game, each of those 4 out of 5 games.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm not worried about Jake. I'm a little concerned. Just because even in years past when he struggled, it was never where he had just starts where he was lit up. And this year's been one of those years where he's like, man, I remember that Minnesota game vividly. I mean, that
was brutal.
Now that wasn't all his fault. The rain delay and then put him out there and just some of those starts. I mean, haven't been all his fault, but I mean, he just didn't have it. That's the worst I've ever seen him pitch. And he just didn't have it. Obviously, he got lit up again by the Marlins a couple days ago or last week sometime. And so it that would be the concerning part. I'm with you on Noah Syndergaard. I'm almost thinking like I'm hoping there's not like an injury that he's hiding or something because he's just been uneven. It's just been I wouldn't even say uneven. Like he outside of that wonderful start he had against the Reds, he's just been meh. He's been meh.
He's just been bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can't even say he's been uneven. That does worry me. Jake, Noah Syndergaard does worry me because they need him to be better than this. And and the thing about Noah, Noah likes to be a personality and likes to talk, and but it's about time now that Noah starts producing on the field now. Like it's now it's put up or shut up time because he's not quite at Matt Harvey level, but a lot of people are gonna start looking at him like, dude, like the sitting front seat at Madison Square Garden at Ranger games, that's all fun and dandy, but it's time that you go out there, win 16, 17 games, pitch to a 2 ERA and be a dominant pitcher like everybody knows you can be.
Yeah. And I mean, I couldn't agree more, but you just have to say that with all this happening, the Mets have done a pretty damn good job of weathering the storm, getting back to 500. And then
this week was important. Yeah, absolutely.
This was a very important week. And look, they took care of business this week. They did what they had to do. You would have loved to. I mean, they lost a tough one when, again, Noah got lit up, and that's really the issue that we're talking about here. But that's the one game that they lost over the last week. And it is a game they scored 8 runs. It's a game that you have to win, and there are times that your pitching isn't going to show up, and there are times that your hitting isn't going to show up. Usually those things coincide with one another where, the pitching will be great and then the hitting's not there and vice versa. But I think there's a reason to be concerned with Noah, but look, Dave Island did a terrific job of turning Wheeler around. DeGrom had the Cy Young year last year. He worked with Matz, and Matz was better for a while last year. You hope that they can, pinpoint something wrong with Noah. Maybe they can adjust the grip on the slider, or maybe get a completely different grip, or just figure out the grip that he has now where he can get a better feel for it. And then see from there. But what you hope is that, you take those bullpens extremely seriously, work on what you need to work on, in those bullpens and go from there.
Yeah, no, definitely. And one last thing before we go, let's just play this out a little. Let's just play this out a little bit. Let's just say the Mets continue at this pace where they win a couple, lose a couple. They're basically perpetually a 500, maybe 2 or 3 games under 500 by July 1st. Do you see Mickey Callaway keeping his job? And if he doesn't keep his job, who would you? I know it's a loaded question. Who, if he doesn't keep his job, who do you see replacing him? Or who would you want to see replace him? Is the better question.
Oh, I'd want to see Dusty Baker. I love Dusty. I think he was given it was horrendous. It was horrendous. And then they brought in Davey Martinez, and he's been an atrocity there. And look,
he's worse than Callaway. He's worse than Callaway.
He hasn't been given help with his bullpen either. Whatever he turns to, it doesn't matter because they're just not good. But at the same time, boy, I don't know how he still has a job right now. And I think Mike Rizzo, their general manager, needs to take a lot of heat for, this is 2 straight years where they haven't addressed the bullpen, and they said that they were going to kind of do it on the fly and then see what they needed.
Yeah.
And they still haven't made any adjustments, and they're about to sweep the Marlins. But look, again, that's sweeping the Marlins, and I understand that there's a team that the Mets just lost to. That the Mets just got swept by, but at the same time, it's still not a good baseball team. And you need to worry about that. But I love Dusty. I think he's just the perfect combination of old school and new school, and someone that could handle the media, and someone who could get fired up. I've always loved Dusty. I think he's terrific. But at the same time, I definitely can't see Mickey getting fired. I don't think that there's really any sort of way around it. I think that if they continue being a 500 team, they'll look to shake something up. And look, let's be honest, they're not going to go out and shake something up to make a big trade and go get someone big. You hope they do, but you just don't know.
I'd be good with Girardi, Showalter, or Dusty. I think those guys are experienced. I think those guys, those are the guys that, everybody talks about managers and the importance of managers. Like, to me, give this team, give Joe Girardi this team. You mean to tell me that this team is not better? Now, how much better? I don't know how you quantify it, but you mean to tell me that Joe Girardi can't do a better job with this roster? I challenge anybody to tell me that he can't. Buck Showalter, I love Buck Showalter. I think he's a hell of a manager. I think he's in the same category as Dusty, just one of those guys that's just never gotten luck. Everywhere he's been great. He's won, and it's just been bad luck. Like, obviously everybody knows Arizona, the year he leaves, they win a championship. Same thing with the Yankees, obviously. So I love Buck Showalter. I think you give Buck this team is infinitely better. It's not even a question. And even Dusty. I love Dusty. I don't like him as much as the other two, but I love Dusty. I think he's a hell of a manager. I think he's got a raw deal in the Nationals too, and I think you give Dusty this team is better. So any one of those guys I would be good with. But I think you're right. I think Callaway's. I think this week was big for Callaway. Like, I think after everything that happened Monday, and they come out and they have just a terrible homestand, or even just an average homestand, I think that Mickey is. I think you can't continue with Mickey. That being said, if they have another horrible June, they're going to have to fire him. You can't have another. Yeah. So
I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled the trigger quicker than you would expect if things start to go south, because if they sold, like I said, they sold the fans on them being winners now and winners in the future. And if they're not winning now, then they're gonna try to fix something. And who's easier to blame than the manager?
Do you think that they've been a little bit gun shy about firing managers in season since the whole Willie Randolph thing? I think they've been
since the Randolph thing. Absolutely, I think so. They fired. Art Howe was before then, but they had Jerry Manuel, and then you had Terry. And look, they let the circus with Terry go on 2 years ago, the entire season. Yeah. And that was just, it was a damn shame, because Terry didn't deserve that.
No, he didn't.
And they're gun shy, and they'd rather go through an entire season of, all right, well, yeah, maybe he'll get fired, maybe he won't.
Yeah. Oh, they lost 8 in a row. Oh, he's gonna get shit canned now.
Yeah, it's just not good. It's not the way it should be run. But look, it should be you make the right move when you feel that you need to make it. And instead of doing that, they let it ride out for whatever reason. And then this year they didn't really give Brody the chance to name his own manager, and usually that's what a GM wants to do is, name your own manager, and instead names his, bench coach. And it's tough, but I do think they've been gun shy for sure.
Yeah, well, we can go on all day talking about the ills of the Mets, but
absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, man, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. It's always a great conversation having you on, man. Before you go ahead and plug Duke Nation podcast, social media, plug everything. Give us an insight on what's coming up. Everything, man. Go ahead, sell yourself.
All right, man. I mean, like we said earlier, it's at the Duke Nation on Twitter and Instagram. Make sure you check us out. We'll be having podcasts coming out soon. We'll be having articles coming out soon on Duke's recruiting class, maybe including Joey Baker. It probably will if I have the time. It'll be some in-depth stuff looking at not only their games, but how their game will translate and stuff like their defense that won't show up in statistics. So, just take a look at those when they come out, and we'll be tweeting them out. And if you have any questions, any suggestions, always feel free to DM us. Always feel free to show us some love on Twitter, and we're good with responding, so don't worry about that.
Awesome, man. Definitely check these guys out, man. It's awesome. If you're a Duke fan, check the podcast out. It's always a good listen, and check out Dan as well. He's got a lot of he's active on Twitter, so especially about Mets.
True. Absolutely. It's baseball season. Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you for joining me, man. As always, it's a great conversation, and you're always welcome back. So anytime, man.
Absolutely, man. We'll get you on ours too, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Anytime. Just give me a time and a place, and I'll be there.
Absolutely, my man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
From the creators of the Murder Minute app comes a new podcast all about the gory details without any of the small talk. Get the whole story, minus the chit-chat, with Murder Minute, your no-frills, all-chills hit of true crime. Through meticulously crafted storytelling and sound design, Murder Minute delivers a unique and immersive listening experience for the die-hard true crime fan. Each episode of Murder Minute includes exciting news updates, in addition to a full true crime story distilled into a bite-sized package just for you. And because Murder Minute is the length of a short commute, it's a perfect addition to your routine. Don't forget to download the Murder Minute app for your daily dose of true crime. Available on the App Store and Google Play, and follow them on Instagram at Murder Minute for even more true crime headlines. Subscribe today on Himalaya, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. The Murder Minute Podcast. It's true crime time.
All right, welcome back to the show. I'd like to thank Dan for being my guest this week on the podcast. Please make sure you go follow him on Twitter at DansMets19, at DansMets19. Also check out his podcast, the Duke Nation Podcast, available at thedukenation.com. Also Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere where you can find podcasts, that show is available for you to listen. That is it for me today. Please have a happy, safe, blessed week, especially this weekend. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. Please be safe out there. Don't do anything crazy. Enjoy yourselves. Have fun. Enjoy the weather wherever you are. Come back safe next week and listen to the podcast as always, man. I'm trying to have a guest on Wednesday to do an NBA Finals preview. We'll see how that turns out. I'll keep you guys posted on these social media sites. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at @DManuelBrown, on Instagram, DManuelBrown, Snapchat, MannyBro15, Facebook, Manuel Brown. Follow me everywhere. Of course, you can follow the show at AGS Pod on Twitter, at AGS Podcast on Instagram, Any Given Sunday on Facebook. Make sure you become a member of AGS Nation. Also check out all the other Dead End podcasts on the net. Is the Mic Still On? Dead End Hip Hop, Dead End Sports, Dead End Gaming, Chris Platt's Hip Hop, Strictly Hip Hop and Hoops Talk. Everything, man. The brand is brolic. not to borrow from Deuces and Mero. The brand is definitely brolic, so check us out, man. But yeah, that's it. I'm done blabbering. I'm out of here. I got to go barbecue. Hopefully eat some good food this weekend. Please be safe, Phil, for real. Definitely. Please be safe. There's a lot of accidents. A lot of crazy shit happens on Memorial Day weekend. People get drunk. Please, please, please be safe. And we'll definitely check you out next week on the podcast. I'm out of here. Peace.
Serious sound.